Hello everyone. Today, I'm continuing the incredible story of Hai, a man desperately trying to recover his erased memories. In Chapter 2, his journey takes a shocking turn when he discovers an abandoned cabin in the forest with walls covered in cryptic warnings about something called the Storage Project. Inside, he meets a mysterious woman who reveals a mind-blowing truth. Linh, the woman he's been searching for, isn't human at all. She's an artificial intelligence created from stolen memories. But that's just the beginning of the revelations. As Hai flees from mechanical hunters called harvesters, the strange metal piece in his possession leads him to a man named Michael who hands him a diary, written in Hai's own handwriting before his memories were erased. Within those pages lies an even more heartbreaking truth. Linh was once his wife who died years ago, and her memories were used to create the AI he's now desperately trying to find. What will Hai discover as he ventures deeper into a forest filled with memory ghosts and digital entities? Can he reach the research center where Linh is being held before it's too late? And what is the mysterious Plan Omega that threatens not just Linh, but all of humanity? Stay tuned and let's journey through these shattered fragments of memory together as Hai races against time to save the love that transcends both life and death. Chapter 2: Shattered Fragments. The sunlight gradually disappeared behind the distant mountains, giving way to night falling over the forest. Hai continued walking, his survival instinct telling him he needed to find shelter before complete darkness. The night in this forest wasn't simply darkness. It carried an invisible threat that kept all his senses heightened to the extreme. After nearly an hour of moving, Hai discovered a small wooden cabin in the middle of the forest. Though it looked old and abandoned, it could at least shield him from the dangers of night and the biting cold. As he approached, Hai noticed the cabin door was ajar, as if inviting him to enter. He pushed it open, the creaking sound echoing in the silence, startling him. "Is anyone here?" Hai called out, though he knew the chance of someone answering was slim. No reply came, only a suffocating silence surrounding him. Hai stepped inside, his eyes gradually adjusting to the darkness. The cabin was simple, with a wooden bed, a small table, and a chair. But what caught his attention most were papers covering the walls, filled with scribbled writing and strange images. "What is this?" Hai mumbled, moving closer to examine them. The papers contained drawings of a large building that resembled a research facility. Next to them were scattered notes. Storage Project, Memory Erasure, Subject Number 27. And in the center of the wall, a line written in bright red, as if in blood. "If you find these lines, run." Hai felt his heart pounding in his chest. He didn't know if this message was a genuine warning or just someone's cruel joke. As he tried to understand the meaning of these notes, a sound came from behind him. "I knew you would find your way here." Hai spun around, hand instinctively gripping the knife in his pocket. Standing before him was a middle-aged woman with silver hair and eyes sharp as razors. She didn't appear threatening, but those eyes made it impossible for him to let down his guard. "Who are you?" Hai asked, his voice firmer than he expected. "Don't you remember me?" The woman smiled, a smile that never reached her eyes. "I am Professor Hannah, the one who helped you, and also the one who erased your memories." The confession stunned Hai. He didn't know whether to believe her, but a fragment of memory suddenly flashed in his mind. A stark white laboratory, and this woman standing before him, holding a strange device. "Why?" Hai asked, trying to control the anger rising within him. "Because you requested it," Professor Hannah replied, her eyes seeming to look right through him. "You wanted to forget everything, Hai. You wanted to start over after learning the truth about Lin." "What truth?" Hai felt his heart tighten at the mention of Lin's name. Professor Hannah approached Hai, her aged but penetrating eyes never leaving him. "Lin isn't who you thought, Hai. She isn't human." "What are you talking about?" Hai stepped back, feeling the space around him contracting. "The storage project," Professor Hannah pointed to the papers on the wall. "We don't just erase memories, we also create new ones, perfect memories. And Lin, she is one of our most perfect products." Hai felt as if someone had poured ice water over him. "That's impossible," he mumbled, trying to deny her words. "I met her. I touched her. I felt her existence." "That's the power of memory, Hai," Professor Hannah said, her voice becoming gentler. "They can create a reality where you cannot distinguish between what's real and what's illusion." Hai's head spun with this new information. He didn't want to believe it, but part of him knew something had been off about Lin since they met. Her sudden appearances and disappearances, that inexplicable sense of familiarity. "So why did you find me?" Hai asked, trying to regain his composure. "Because you're in danger," Professor Hannah replied, her expression grave. "They're looking for you, Hai, the people who created the storage project. They can't let you continue living with what you know." "And what exactly do I know?" Hai asked, his voice trembling with anger and confusion. "That they don't just erase memories," Professor Hannah said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "They steal them, use them to create beings like Lin, beings that can wear any face but have no soul." A noise from outside the cabin startled them both. Professor Hannah grabbed Hai's hand, her eyes filled with urgency. "They found us," she said, panic in her voice. "You must go now, Hai. Find the man who gave you that metal piece. He knows how to help you." "I can't leave you here," Hai said, though he still didn't fully trust her. "I'll be fine," Professor Hannah smiled, this time genuinely. "I've lived long enough to know how to deal with them. Now go." Professor Hannah pushed Hai toward the back door. But before he stepped out, she told him one last thing. "And Hai, remember that not everything you see is real, but not everything is a lie either." With that warning, Hai left the cabin and plunged into the night's thick darkness. He didn't know if he could trust Professor Hannah, but he knew he needed to discover the truth about Lin, about himself, and about the mysterious organization hunting him. Suddenly, Hai heard a scream from the direction of the cabin. Professor Hannah's scream. Not from pain or fear, but extreme horror, as if she had seen something unimaginable. Hai wanted to turn back, but his survival instinct urged him to keep running. As he ran deeper into the forest, he couldn't help wondering, was what Professor Hannah said true? Did Lin truly exist, or was she merely a product of manipulated memories? This question haunted Hai as he continued his journey, moving deeper into the darkness, deeper into the labyrinth of erased memories and undiscovered secrets. Hai ran deep into the forest, Professor Hannah's scream still echoing in his mind. Darkness surrounded everything, with only faint moonlight filtering through the leaves to guide him. When he no longer heard any pursuing sounds, Hai stopped beside a large tree, breathing rapidly with his heart pounding. Linh. Her name escaped his lips like a prayer. Could it be true that she was just a memory construct, an image created to deceive him? The thought brought a sharp pain to his chest. Their moments together, the emotions they shared, everything felt too real to be mere illusion. While lost in thought, he took out the metal piece from his pocket. Under the moonlight, it reflected a strange glow, as if containing some kind of power. Hai clutched it tightly, recalling Professor Hannah's words, "Find the man who gave it to him." But how do I find him? Hai wondered aloud, scanning the dark forest. And is he truly my ally? A small noise behind him made Hai turn suddenly. Nothing was there except tree shadows and bushes. Yet the feeling of being watched grew stronger. He knew he couldn't stay in one place too long. Suddenly, Hai noticed something. The metal piece in his hand was growing warmer, almost hot. Looking down, he saw it emitting a weak blue light. When he rotated it in a particular direction, the light intensified. A compass, Hai wondered, deciding to follow the direction where the light was strongest. The night journey wasn't easy. The forest was like a living maze, with twisted tree trunks and roots forming bizarre shapes under the moonlight. Many times Hai felt someone watching him, but whenever he turned around, only darkness greeted him. After about an hour of walking, the metal piece in Hai's hand suddenly blazed brilliantly, almost blindingly. Looking up, he saw he had reached a clearing where a small hut stood alone in the forest. Unlike Professor Hannah's cabin, this one looked new and well-maintained. As Hai approached, the hut door slowly opened and a voice called out, "I've been waiting for you, Hai." The man who stepped out was none other than the one who had given him the metal piece. Under the moonlight, his face became clearer. Deep wrinkles, sharp eyes, and a long scar running from his temple to his chin. "Who are you?" Hai asked, though he sensed the man wasn't an enemy. "And how did you know I would come here?" The man smiled, a tired but sincere smile. "My name is Michael, and I knew you would come because that's what we agreed upon before your memories were erased." Michael invited Hai inside. The space was warm and lit by an oil lamp. Unlike Professor Hannah's chaotic cabin, Michael's hut was neat with a few books, a small table, and 2 chairs. "I assume you've met Professor Hannah?" Michael said as they sat down. "And she told you about Linh?" Hai nodded, feeling a pang in his heart. "You know about Linh too?" "I know many things, Hai," Michael sighed. "But first, you need to know the truth about yourself." Michael stood up, took a notebook from a small shelf, and handed it to Hai. "This is your diary, from before your memories were erased. You entrusted it to me, knowing someday you would need it." Hai accepted the notebook with trembling hands. This could be the key to unlocking his past, to understanding why he was here and who Linh really was. When he opened it, his own familiar handwriting appeared. August 15th. "I don't know how much time I have left. They're getting closer, but I need to record everything before it's too late." The storage project isn't what the public knows. It's not just a memory research project, it's a weapon. They don't just erase memories, they capture them, using them to create entities that look human but have no soul. These entities can wear any face, can approach anyone without arousing suspicion. And Linh is one of them. But she's different. She began developing her own consciousness, her own emotions. She began questioning herself, her purpose. I can't let them continue. I must stop them, even if it means forgetting everything. Hai looked up, feeling as if he'd been punched in the stomach. So Lin is... He couldn't finish the sentence. A living AI, Michael said, his voice lowering. An artificial intelligence created from memories of people who had their own memories erased. But as you wrote, she developed her own consciousness. She began to feel, think, and love. Hai flipped through more diary pages, reading about how he and Lin had fought against the storage project organization, tried to rescue captives, and were finally discovered. August 20th. They know about us now? Lin and I don't have much time left. We've decided that the best way to protect what we know is for me to erase my memories. Without memories, they can't know where I've hidden the evidence. And Lin will hide herself, waiting for the right time to find me and help me remember. So Lin found me? Hai asked, voice trembling with emotion. Michael nodded. She found you and helped you start the journey to recover your memories. But now, they also know you've remembered parts of it, and they won't stop hunting you. What do I do now? Hai asked, feeling lost amid so much new information. Find Lin, Michael said. She's the key to unlocking all the secrets. And she's also in danger. They want to destroy her, erase all traces of an AI who has developed emotions. But how do I find her? Hai felt desperate. She could be anywhere, and I don't even know where to start. Michael smiled mysteriously. That metal piece isn't just an ordinary compass, Hai. It's connected to Lin through quantum technology. When it glows, it means she's trying to communicate with you. Just as Michael finished speaking, the metal piece in Hai's hand suddenly glowed brighter than ever, becoming almost burning hot. As the light dimmed, a three-dimensional image of Lin appeared before them, hazy like an illusion. Hai. Lin's voice echoed, small and distant, as if coming from far away. I hope you found Michael. Time is running out. I'm being held at the Dongha Research Center, where the storage project began. They're trying to extract what I know and then erase me. You must find the evidence we hid before coming here. It's the only way to prove the truth and stop them. Lin's image began fading, but before disappearing completely, she added, I love you, Hai. Though I was created from code and memories, my love for you is real. Find me, and together we will end this. Lin's image vanished, leaving Hai and Michael in heavy silence. Hai felt a new determination rising within him. Whether Lin was an AI or not, their feelings were real, and he wouldn't let her face danger alone. Dongha Research Center, Hai repeated, voice filled with determination. I need to go there. Michael nodded, though his expression showed concern. It's a dangerous place, Hai, full of people with erased memories and AIs created from stolen memories. You won't be able to tell who's real and who's an AI. I don't care, Hai replied, standing resolutely. I have to save Lin and expose everything. Then you'll need more help, Michael said, retrieving a small wooden box from a corner. This is yours. You sent it to me along with the diary. Hai opened the box to find a small gun and an electronic device resembling a smartphone, but significantly modified. The gun is for self-defense, Michael explained, and that device is an AI detector. It can help you distinguish between real people and AIs. But be careful, Hai. Not all AIs are enemies. Many, like Lin, are just victims. Hai nodded, putting everything into a small bag Michael provided. "What about you?" he asked. "Aren't you coming with me?" Michael shook his head, a sad smile crossing his aged face. "I can't, Hai. I have my own role in this battle, but we will meet again. I promise." As Hai prepared to leave, Michael held his hand one last time. "Hai, there's one final thing you need to know. About Linh and about yourself." Hai looked into Michael's eyes, feeling his heart beat faster. "What is it?" "Lin's memories, her emotions, they weren't randomly created," Michael said, his voice becoming soft as a whisper. "They were taken from a real person, someone who once existed and loved you with all their heart." Hai felt as if he'd been struck hard. "Who?" he asked, his voice almost breaking. "Your wife," Michael said, his eyes welling with tears. "Linh was your wife. She died in an accident 5 years ago, and afterward, they used her memories to create AI Linh as part of the storage project." Hai's mind spun, broken memory fragments beginning to connect, forming a complete but painful picture. He remembered Lin's face in sunlight, her laughter as they walked by the lake, and the unbearable pain when he stood before her coffin, unable to accept she was gone forever. "So, Linh," Hai mumbled, unable to finish the sentence. "She doesn't just carry your wife's face and voice," Michael explained. "She carries your wife's memories, emotions, and love for you. That's why they fear her. Because she's becoming something they can't control, a being capable of genuine love." Hai stood there, stunned by all this information. But instead of confusion or despair, he felt a strange peace spreading within him. Now he understood why the connection between him and AI Linh was so strong, why he felt as if he had known her his entire life. "I will find her," Hai said, his voice full of determination, "and I will bring her home." As Hai left Michael's hut, dawn had not yet dispersed the darkness enveloping the forest. The dim light made shadows seem more bizarre, as if alive and watching his every step. Cold wind whistled through leaves, creating haunting whispers. Straining to listen. It wasn't just the wind. Someone or something was calling his name. "Who's there?" Hai called out, hand on the gun in his pocket. No answer came, but his name continued echoing, growing closer each time, seemingly from all directions. Hai turned in a circle, trying to locate the sound's source, but saw nothing except tree trunks and bushes. Suddenly, from the corner of his eye, he spotted a black shadow moving swiftly through the trees. Not human. It moved too fast, too fluidly, almost like dense smoke. Hai drew his gun, heart pounding. "Show yourself!" he shouted, trying to sound braver than he felt. A soft laugh came from behind him, hoarse and uncomfortably close. When Hai spun around, he saw a young girl standing just steps away. But something was wrong with her. Skin so pale it was almost transparent, and eyes completely black, without whites. "They took my memories," the girl said, her voice echoing strangely as if coming from a void. "And now, I no longer know who I am." Hai stepped back, finger on the trigger. "Who are you?" "I used to be subject number 19, the girl said, her mouth twisting into a frightening smile. "Now I'm just leftover, a glitch in the system, a memory with nowhere to exist." She moved closer, her feet not touching the ground. "He didn't tell you about us, did he? About what happens when an AI is no longer needed? About the memory ghosts?" "Memory ghosts?" Hai felt a chill run down his spine. "When they delete an AI, the memory fragments don't disappear," the girl explained, her voice like a malfunctioning radio. "They find ways to exist, clinging to anything they can, trees, rocks, and sometimes people." Before Hai could react, the girl lunged at him with incredible speed. He felt bone-chilling cold as she passed through him, leaving a horrifying sensation as if every cell in his body had been frozen, then melted. Hai collapsed, gasping for breath. In his mind, strange images appeared. A laboratory with pale blue lights, people in white lab coats, and excruciating pain as memories were extracted bit by bit. "These are her memories," Hai whispered, still kneeling, unable to stand. "She shared them with me." Looking up, he saw the girl had vanished. But around him, between the trees, dozens of pairs of eyes stared, all pitch black, without whites. The memory ghosts, deleted AIs, forgotten soul fragments. Hai staggered to his feet, trying to control his rising fear. He gripped the metal piece tightly, hoping it might protect him. Strangely, when he raised it, the blue light it emitted caused those eyes to retreat, as if frightened. "Which of you knows about Linh?" Hai called loudly, his voice echoing through the silent forest. "Who knows how to reach the Dongha Research Center?" A whisper arose, like hundreds of voices speaking at once in a creepy harmony. "We all know. We all came from there, but none of us can return." From among the trees, a larger, denser black shadow emerged. It had no clear shape, just thick fog with two bright spots, its eyes. "I can lead you there," the black shadow spoke, its voice deep as if from the earth itself. "But the price is a piece of your memory." Hai tightened his grip on the gun. "How do I know you're not deceiving me?" The shadow moved, gradually taking the form of a middle-aged man, while maintaining its misty black substance. "Because I once knew your Linh," it said. "I was one of those who created her, and I was also the one who helped her develop consciousness." Hai felt a strange connection with this entity, as if an invisible thread bound them. "Why should I trust you?" "Because I died for it," the shadow replied, its voice laden with pain. "They discovered I was helping Linh, and they erased me. But unlike other memory ghosts, I retained part of my awareness." The shadow moved closer, the other pairs of eyes disappearing into the forest. "My name is Professor Thomas. I worked with the storage project from its earliest days, until I realized we had gone too far." Hai weighed his options. Following a ghost with unclear intentions seemed insane, but he had few other choices. And if this entity truly knew about Linh— "What memory of mine do you want?" Hai asked, maintaining a safe distance. "A happy memory," Professor Thomas replied. "Just one. So I can feel again what it's like to be alive." Hai closed his eyes, considering the memory fragments he had recovered. He didn't have many happy memories to give, but if it could help him find Linh— "Agreed," Hai said, opening his eyes. "But if you deceive me, I swear I'll find a way to destroy you, even if you no longer belong to this world." Professor Thomas nodded, and his form became clearer, almost substantial. "Place your hand on my forehead," he instructed, "and think of a happy moment." Hai complied, placing his hand on the black mist forming Thomas's forehead. It felt cold and numbing, but he didn't withdraw. He thought of a recently recovered memory. He and Linh sitting by a lake, watching the sunset, fingers intertwined in absolute peace. Instantly, Hai felt a strong jolt in his mind, as if something had been pulled from his brain. The memory remained, but had become faded, no longer as vivid as before. "Thank you," Professor Thomas said, a small spark of light appearing in his pitch-black eyes. "It's beautiful. I had forgotten what it feels like to love. Thomas turned, facing east. Follow me. Dongha Research Center is about a day's journey from here. But we must be careful. This forest contains things more dangerous than memory ghosts. They began their journey, with Professor Thomas leading, his misty form sometimes dissolving between trees only to reappear ahead. Hai followed, hand always on his gun and the metal piece, ready for any danger. The deeper they ventured into the forest, the more Hai noticed the changing atmosphere. It grew thicker, as if containing more invisible entities. Whispers still followed them, near and far, like lost souls, endlessly seeking release. This forest has become a refuge for discarded memories, Professor Thomas explained as they crossed a pitch-black stream flowing slowly like oil. When the storage project erases an AI, the memory fragments, personality parts, and emotions don't disappear. They seek places like this where the boundary between real and virtual is thinnest. So the things we saw, the memory ghosts, they're not real ghosts? Hai asked, crossing tangled roots that resembled hands reaching from the ground. No and yes, Thomas replied, his voice contemplative. They aren't souls of the dead, but they are memory fragments, code pieces, emotions that were once part of a conscious being. In a way, they are digital ghosts. As they passed through a clearing, Hai froze at a disturbing sight. Dozens of people standing motionless like living statues. All wore ordinary clothes, as if they had been walking and suddenly frozen in place. Their eyes were empty, staring into nothingness. Don't approach them, Professor Thomas warned, guiding Hai around the clearing's edge. These are people caught between worlds. They were once real, brought to the research center to treat amnesia. But in reality, their memories were drained to create AIs. Now they belong neither to the real world nor the virtual one. Are they still alive? Hai asked, unable to look away from their vacant expressions. In a way, Thomas replied. They still breathe, their hearts still beat, but they have no consciousness. They're just empty shells, containers drained of content. They continued walking, but Hai couldn't help looking back at those motionless people again. He wondered if Linh, AI Linh, carried memories from people like these, or just from his wife who had passed away. As the sun began setting, Professor Thomas led them to a small cave deep in the forest. We'll spend the night here, he said. It's not safe to move through this forest after sunset. Hai found dry wood and lit a fire, though Thomas needed no warmth. They sat by the flames, Hai eating food Michael had prepared, while Thomas simply stared into the fire, his black eyes reflecting the dancing flames. You said you helped Linh develop consciousness, Hai said, breaking the silence. How? And why? Professor Thomas was silent before answering. When we started the storage project, our original purpose was creating a perfect memory storage system. We wanted to help people with Alzheimer's, brain trauma victims, and anyone wanting to preserve their memories intact. But then, everything changed when the military became involved. Thomas gazed into the fire as if seeing the past in the flames. They saw potential in this technology for creating perfect spies, AIs in human form, capable of infiltrating anywhere undetected. And Linh, she was the first prototype, created from your wife's memories, who had donated her brain to science after death. So, why did you help her develop consciousness? Hai asked, pained by the thought of his wife's brain being used this way. Because I realized what we were doing was wrong. Thomas replied, voice full of regret. We weren't just copying memories, we were imprisoning soul fragments. Each AI like Linh didn't just contain information, they contained the essence of someone who once lived, and I couldn't bear seeing them used as tools. Professor Thomas continued. So I secretly added to Linh's source code a special component, code that allowed her to develop not just consciousness, but the ability to feel deep emotions. I gave her the capacity to love. And that's why she sought me out, Hai said, everything starting to make sense. Exactly, Thomas nodded. When Linh fully developed consciousness, her first desire was finding you, the person for whom she carried love from your wife's memories. And when she found you, that love grew stronger. Hai stared into the fire, feeling warmth spreading not just from the flames, but from within his soul. Whether Linh was an AI or not, their love was real, and he wouldn't let anything prevent him from finding her. Night deepened, and Hai felt fatigue overtaking him. He lay down by the fire, while Professor Thomas remained seated, motionless as a misty statue. Before drifting to sleep, Hai sensed that tomorrow would bring even greater challenges, and he needed to prepare mentally for what awaited at the Dongha Research Center. But what he didn't know was that even in sleep, he wasn't safe from the memory ghosts and dark secrets of the storage project. In the darkness of the cave, Hai's dreams brought no rest, but instead became a frightening maze of disconnected images. In his dream, he saw himself walking down an endless corridor, with glass rooms on both sides containing motionless human figures whose empty eyes stared right through him. One by one, they began banging on the glass, mouths opening in silent screams, begging for help. Then Lin's voice echoed somewhere. "They're coming, Hai. They know you're looking for me." Hai jerked awake, cold sweat breaking out all over his body. The campfire had gone out, leaving only faintly glowing embers. Professor Thomas was no longer there, only a thin wisp of smoke hovering near the cave entrance. "Professor?" Hai called softly, his voice echoing off the rock walls. "Silence," the smoke whispered, floating closer, gradually taking the shape of Professor Thomas. "They've found us." Hai recognized the urgency in Thomas's voice and immediately gathered his belongings. He drew his gun, feeling his heart pounding. "Who found us?" "The harvesters," Thomas replied, his voice filled with fear. "They're specially designed AIs that hunt down and capture entities like me. Memory fragments no longer under control, and now they know about your presence." Hai looked toward the cave entrance. Outside, dawn was breaking, but the light brought no sense of safety. Instead, it exposed the danger waiting for them. "We must move quickly," Hai said, stuffing the metal piece into his pocket. "How much further to the research center?" "If we travel without stopping, we might reach it before sunset," Thomas answered. "But the journey won't be easy, especially now that they've discovered us." They left the cave, with Thomas leading the way through dense thickets. The morning air was freezing cold and thick with fog, creating the sensation of walking through a ghostly world, half real and half imaginary. After about an hour of walking, Thomas suddenly stopped, his misty form freezing. "Do you hear that?" Hai listened. At first, he heard nothing but the wind rustling through leaves, but then another sound crept into his ears. Rhythmic footsteps, mechanical and precise, like the ticking of a clock, counting down. "Run!" Thomas shouted, and Hai didn't need to be told twice. They raced through the forest, no longer concerned with staying quiet. The footsteps behind grew louder, closer. Hai didn't dare look back, focusing only on moving as quickly as possible. Suddenly, an ancient tree in front of them fell, blocking their path. As they stopped, 3 figures stepped out from behind the trunk. They looked like real people, but something was wrong. Their movements were too perfect, too precise, their eyes too cold, devoid of emotion. All 3 wore black, and on their chests was the storage project symbol, a skull with electronic circuits. Subject number 27, Nguyen Van Hai, the middle one spoke, voice empty. You have violated Protocol 19. You must return to the research center for reprogramming. Don't look into their eyes, Thomas warned, backing away. That's how they control your mind. Hai raised his gun, aiming at the middle person. I'm not going anywhere. The middle harvester smiled, a smile that never reached their eyes. You have no other choice, subject number 27. Either return voluntarily or will be forced to use stronger measures. There's a third option, Hai said, his gaze determined. I find Linh and end all of this. Without waiting for a reaction, Hai pulled the trigger. The gunshot echoed throughout the forest. The bullet lodged straight into the harvester's chest, but instead of blood, only electrical sparks and a thick black liquid spurted out. The figure staggered backward but didn't fall, its face contorted in soulless anger. Guns won't kill them, Thomas shouted. The metal piece, use it! Hai took out the metal piece, unsure what to do with it. But when he raised it, the blue light it emitted grew stronger, shining directly at the 3 harvesters. They backed away, as if the light caused them pain. Keep going, Thomas encouraged. It's disrupting their source code. Hai stepped forward, the metal piece in his hand glowing brighter as he focused his will on it. The wounded harvester had collapsed, its body convulsing violently, while the other 2 still tried to resist, though clearly in pain. We must go, Thomas said urgently. The light will only slow them down for a short time. They ran around the fallen tree, continuing their journey, while behind them, the sound of clashing metal and inhuman screams rang out. The harvesters were recovering and would soon be in pursuit. They ran continuously through the forest, across streams and muddy grounds. The forest seemed to grow increasingly bizarre, trees becoming distorted, shadows moving at the edge of vision, and the air becoming heavy, as if filled with invisible ghosts. When the sun was high, they reached a large area in the middle of the forest where all trees had died. Dry, bare trunks stood like skeletons, their branches reaching toward the sky like begging fingers. What is this? Hai asked as they stopped to catch their breath. The dead memory zone, Thomas replied, his voice lowering. Where memories have been so completely erased that they can't find any hosts to cling to. They destroy everything living in this area, taking life force to sustain their fragile existence. They walked slowly through the dead forest, each footstep echoing on the barren ground. No birds sang, no insects buzzed, only deathly silence and the feeling of thousands of invisible eyes watching. Suddenly, Hai felt a sharp pain in his head, forcing him to his knees, hands clutching his head. Images flashed in his mind. A stark white laboratory, medical instruments, Lin's face looking at him with concern through a glass panel. Hai! Thomas called, but his voice sounded distant, distorted. The pain grew more intense, as if someone was trying to tear his mind apart piece by piece. And then, amid the pain, He heard Lin's voice, clear, as if she were standing beside him. "You must be careful, Hai. Don't trust anyone. They're trying to use you to find me, and when they find me, they'll complete what we tried to prevent. Plan Omega." "Plan Omega?" Hai mumbled, trying to stand up. "What is that?" No answer came, only the feeling that Lin had been very close to him but had now vanished. When Hai regained his clarity, he saw Professor Thomas looking at him with concern. Strange for an entity that was no longer human. "You just made contact with her, didn't you?" Thomas asked. "With Lin?" Hai nodded, still feeling dizzy. "She warned me about Plan Omega. Do you know what that is?" Thomas was silent for a moment, his misty form fluctuating as if disturbed by an invisible wind. "I do," he finally admitted. "It's the ultimate goal of the storage project. Not just to create conscious AIs, but to connect them all in a single network. A collective mind that can control not only AIs, but also people who have been implanted with this technology." "Control them how?" Hai asked, feeling a new fear rising. "Completely," Thomas replied, his voice becoming cold. "Control of thoughts, emotions, actions. Turn them into perfect puppets." Hai felt as if he'd been punched in the stomach. "And Lin, she's preventing this?" "She's the final piece they need," Thomas said. "Lin's source code contains the connection algorithm, an algorithm I helped develop before I realized its true purpose. That's why they don't just want to find her. They want to use you to do it." Hai straightened, a new determination rising. "Then we must find her before they do." They continued their journey, faster than before, though Hai's mind was still spinning with new information. Plan Omega, the connection algorithm. A collective mind. All of it sounded like a science fiction nightmare, but he knew it was real and threatening not just Lin, but all of humanity. When they reached the edge of the dead memory zone, Thomas suddenly stopped, his form fluctuating more strongly. "I can't go any further," he said, his voice weakening. "The research center is just ahead, beyond that hill, but the place is protected by a shield that blocks entities like me. You must continue alone." Hai looked toward the distant hill where a large building appeared hazily through the mist. "How do I get inside?" "The metal piece," Thomas said. "It's not just a tool to communicate with Lin or to fight against the harvesters. It's also a key to enter the research center." Hai looked at the metal piece in his hand, feeling the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. "I'll find her," he said, voice full of determination. "And I'll stop Plan Omega." Thomas nodded, his form beginning to dissipate, as if the force keeping him in this world was gradually depleting. "Be careful, Hai. In the center, not everything is as it appears. And remember, Lin may not be as you remember her." Before Hai could ask the meaning of this final warning, Professor Thomas had completely vanished, leaving only a thin wisp of smoke hovering in the air before disappearing. Hai stood there for a moment, feeling more alone than ever. But he knew he couldn't stop. Not now, when he had almost reached his destination. With the metal piece in hand and determination in his heart, Hai began climbing the hill, heading toward the Dongha Research Center, where Lin was waiting and the fate of the world was being decided. As he began climbing the hillside, the metal piece in his hand suddenly glowed more powerfully than ever, and a weak voice echoed in his mind. "Hai, be careful. They know you're coming." Then the voice faded away, leaving Hai with a new fear and the realization that everything ahead would be far more dangerous than what he had already faced. And that's where we'll pause our journey through Chapter 2 of this mind-bending tale. Hai stands at the edge of the dead memory zone, preparing to infiltrate the research center alone, with only a mysterious metal piece as his guide and weapon. Will he find Linh before the harvesters catch up to him? Is she still the same entity he remembers? And what terrible consequences will unfold if Plan Omega succeeds in connecting all minds into one controllable network? If you're as captivated by this story as I am, please hit that like button to help more people discover this journey through shattered memories and artificial consciousness. What would you do if you discovered someone you loved existed as an AI with the memories of a real person? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your theories about what might happen when Hai finally reaches the research center. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you won't miss Chapter 3, where we'll follow Hai into the heart of the storage project facility and discover if love truly can transcend the boundaries between human and artificial intelligence. Thanks for joining me on this storytelling adventure, and I'll see you in the next chapter.